Hi guys, welcome back to our City Break Guides, and next up is the German capital city of Berlin. So as ever, we're going to walk you through everything you need to know, from what weather to expect during a visit, how to use the metro, review on all the top attractions, and even some ideas on day trips outside of Berlin. But before all of that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for alerts on all future uploads, and don't leave without giving us a thumbs up if you find it useful. Berlin is served by two airports, Schonefeld and Tegel, with a third currently under construction called Brandenburg, which will be located close to Schonefeld and due to open late 2020. Schonefeld Airport is currently the airport most will arrive at, located to the southeast of the city, 18 kilometres from the city centre. The airport express train is the quickest way to travel into the city. Trains run every 30 minutes and operate between 4 AM and 11 PM. The S Bahn lines S9 and S45 will also get you into the city and allow you to connect to the U Bahn within the city centre, but it's not as convenient as the express train. Meanwhile, Berlin's other airport, Tegel, sits 8 kilometres to the northwest of the city centre and has two core ways to get into the city, a taxi or the TXL express bus. Like most cities in Germany, Berlin has a U-Bahn, which is the inner city underground network, and the S-Bahn, which are the regional trains connecting the city centre with the suburbs and beyond. Taken together, they provide an extensive coverage and a very efficient way of getting around Berlin. All Berlin public transport is integrated, meaning any ticket is valid on all buses, trams, trains and ferries. The cost is simply calculated based on how many zones you travel through. Worth noting that Tegel Airport is Zone B, while Schonefeld is Zone C. A short distance ticket valid for a journey no longer than 3 stops costs €1.90, and then costs gradually increase the more zones and stops you use. If that wasn't enough, East Berlin also has an extensive tram network, and again, the tickets you purchase for the U and S Bhans are valid if you need to catch a tram too. With so many things to do in Berlin, here's our top list of attractions not to miss during a visit. Every major city in the world has a building whose identity is a symbol of that city. In Berlin, that building is the Brandenburg Gate. Back in the 1700s, Berlin was a walled fortress that had various gates allowing people to move in and out of the city. In 1788, the King of Prussia and Prince Elector of Brandenburg, Frederick William II, commissioned a new peace gate to be constructed to replace the existing gate. The quadriga on top was added as a classic symbol of victory and was ironically stolen by Napoleon and shipped back to Paris before the Prussians managed to recapture it and bring it back to Berlin in the 1800s. The gate has been witness to many events in Germany, surviving both World War II and the ensuing Cold War, and is today seen as a symbol of unity in this once divided city. It unsurprisingly has its own metro stop and lies at the very centre of the city. The Reichstag is the second most visited attraction in Germany after the Cologne Cathedral, and is today the home of the German Parliament. It was constructed back in 1894 and acted as the German Parliament through the Weimar Republic years until it was suspiciously ravaged by fire, an event that conveniently helped Hitler tighten his grip on power. From 1933 to 1999, it remained largely abandoned until it was finally chosen to act as the new home of Parliament after reunification, officially opening in April of '99. A stone's throw from the Brandenburg Gate and sandwiched between two metro stops. It's free to visit, but you need to apply online beforehand to secure a spot as places are limited. The visit will entail a walk up the famous dome, providing views of the parliamentary proceedings below and a spectacular view over the city. It's open from 8 AM to midnight each day. The Holocaust Memorial in Berlin is built across a 19,000 square metre plot of land right in the middle of the city, and it's there to commemorate the 6 million Jews who sadly lost their lives during the Holocaust. The memorial consists of over 2,500 concrete slabs of different sizes and was opened in 2005, 60 years after the end of World War II, at a cost of €25 million. Intentionally designed without any symbolism, the memorial is supposed to cause confusion and represents an orderly system out of touch with reality. Its location lies close to where the Chancellery building and Hitler's bunker would have managed and administered their horrific plans. Free to visit, and it sits just south of the Brandenburg Gate and a short walk therefore from the Brandenburger Tor metro. The Berlin Wall was built in 1961 and it divided the city for 28 years until it was famously torn down in 1989. It was initially built by the SED, the communist ruling party of East Germany, to prevent people fleeing across to the democratised western part of the city. Parts of the wall are still standing and you can visit this and the Berlin Memorial free of charge. At 368 metres tall and built in the 60s as a symbol of communist strength, this TV station is currently the tallest structure in Germany and is still a working broadcasting tower. Its impressive height and central location also makes it a very good viewing platform for tourists, providing incredible views over the city. Close to Alexanderplatz Metro and generally open between 9 AM and midnight, adults cost €17.50, children between 4 and 14 pay €9.50 and under 4s are free. There's also a bar and restaurant at the top for those that want to enjoy a meal with a view. Checkpoint Charlie has become a tourist mecca and a symbol of the once divided country. The Soviet Union approved of the Berlin Wall to prevent the mass exodus of East Germans flooding across the border and causing a brain drain on the economy, but you can't build a wall through an entire city without allowing certain crossings. In the western part of the city, they use the NATO phonetic alphabet to dictate the names of the crossings coming in out of western Berlin. After Alpha and Bravo crossing, they settled for Charlie crossing for this one. The guard tower and signs you'll find there are all replicas, but it gives you a good feel for what it would have looked like at the time. It's very centrally located beside the Checkpoint Charlie metro and also beside one of the most visited museums in Germany, the Checkpoint Charlie Museum, that documents the history of the Berlin Wall and the famous crossing. Following on from Checkpoint Charlie, you could then also visit the East Side Gallery. It's the longest open-air gallery in the world and attracts 3 million visitors each year who visit to see the 105 murals that were painted onto a 1,300-metre stretch of the Berlin Wall in 1990 to celebrate its demise. Each picture tells its own story and is invariably coated with various political and social messages. The attraction is free, but donations are welcome. There are not many locations in Europe that hold as much historical significance as the Fuehrer Bunker. It was the last Nazi stronghold before the surrender, and the bunker witnessed those last final chaotic days as everything began to fall apart. It witnessed the last-minute marriage between Eva Braun and Hitler, the terrible forced suicide of Goebbels' children, Hitler completing his will, and finally Hitler and Braun both committing suicide on that fateful day on the 30th of April 1945. Unfortunately for those of us that love history, the post-war authorities were well aware of its significance to both supporters and sympathisers of Nazism and didn't want the location to become a shrine. You won't therefore find much if you do decide to visit, other than a block of flats and a car park, but it still deserves its place on the top list of things to do in Berlin, purely for its historical significance alone. As we've discussed, Berlin has a great public transport network, but we love a hop-on hop-off bus, and Berlin has a very good one, and it will take you to practically every attraction we've discussed in this guide. Available each day from 10 AM to 4 PM, 2 routes on offer, combining 25 stops in total, and each route takes about 2 hours to complete a circuit. Expect to pay around €20 for an adult, and children between 6 and 14 are €10, with under 6 being free. You can also add an hour-long boat tour for an extra €10 for an adult and €5 for a child, which is a nice novel way to see Berlin. Berlin is enormous and there's plenty to keep you busy in the city for any holiday length, but if you did fancy a day trip outside of the city, then both Hamburg and Dresden are close enough for a day trip from Berlin. Dresden is the capital of Saxony and is the 12th most populous city in Germany, sitting around 200 kilometres south of Berlin and therefore a 2-hour drive or train ride away. Historically, the city was furnished with beautiful ornate Baroque and Rococo buildings and was once referred to as the Jewel Box because of the collection of buildings in this style. Sadly, it was controversially bombed in 1945 by Allied forces, and after dropping over 4,000 tonnes of high explosives and incendiary devices, the subsequent firestorm ripped through much of the city and left it utterly devastated. Today, the city has been completely rebuilt in the same style that made it so attractive before the Second World War and is a lovely city to visit. Dresden's population enjoy a high standard of living compared to other German cities, often referred to as Silicon Saxony for its position as a tech giant in Germany, fueled by one of the country's largest universities, sitting within the city limits of Dresden. Meanwhile, to the northwest of Berlin is the economic powerhouse of Hamburg. Under a 2-hour train ride from Berlin, Hamburg is the second biggest city in Germany, with a population of almost 2 million and currently the 7th biggest city in the European Union. Sitting on the Elbe, it has the 3rd largest port in Europe after Antwerp and Rotterdam, which contributes significantly to its GDP. There's plenty of shops and museums to keep you busy, plus a fascinating walk under the Elbe through a 100-year-old tunnel and the largest miniature railway attraction in the world. Berlin is a world city and very multicultural, so its cuisine is more global than German, with plenty of influences from outside the continent, let alone country. For those wanting to sample some popular Berlin dishes, then you won't have to look very hard to find a restaurant serving up some of these gems. Lastly, if you're travelling to Berlin with your children, then you might also want to check out the Tierpark, Legoland Discovery and Tiergarten. Tierpark is the biggest animal park in Europe with over 9,000 animals. It sits to the east of the city centre and is not to be confused with the Berlin Zoo within the Tiergarten, which we'll discuss shortly. You'll find all sorts of animals, both native to Germany and those from further afield, a petting zoo, children's play area and also a little electric train that will drive you around 160 hectares. Open every day of the year, you'll pay €14.50 for an adult, €7 for a child between 4 and 15, and under 4s are free. Meanwhile, in the heart of the city, you'll find the Legoland Discovery Centre next to the Potsdamer Platz metro and only a short walk from the Brandenburg Gate. Built over 2 floors, you have a mini land, a 50 square metre mini Berlin, a 4D cinema, various rides, a cafe and of course Lego, lots of Lego. Buy online in advance for a discount and pay €17.55 per person, with under 3s being free. Finally, Tiergarten to Berlin is what Hyde Park is to London. If you're looking for a wide open outdoor space for a stroll, cycle or picnic, then the Tiergarten, that spans out over 500 acres, is a great place to escape the hustle and bustle of Berlin. Originally royal hunting grounds, the land was converted into a public park by Friedrich III in the late 17th century, and today you'll find some lovely walks, beer gardens and various monuments, including the famous Victory Column, built in the 1800s to celebrate a Prussian victory over the Danes. It has an impressive viewing platform that, for those brave enough to take on the 285-step staircase, provides some lovely panoramic views over the nearby city attractions. Attached to the Tiergarten to its south, you'll also find the most visited zoo in Europe and Germany's oldest zoo, having been opened in 1844. It's home to over 1,200 species of animal, set over 33 hectares, and also providing an aquarium to explore too. To visit both zoo and aquarium costs €22 for an adult and €11 for children between 4 and 15. So that's what to expect from a trip to Berlin. Hope you found that useful, but before you leave, if you're new to our channel, then feel free to subscribe as we regularly post content like this on here to help you with your next getaway. Why not leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and if you're heading off to Berlin anytime soon, have a lovely holiday.